Hello and welcome back to Defense Force.
Choose loadout.
I think
Rangers
I'm just gonna continue to use this loadout because it's
mission.
really good.
Deploying.
And I was incorrect. I forget if this was 1, 2, or like 3 episodes ago, but I said I was gonna be attacking the tower.
We just can't leave that hive any longer.
And that was wrong. Now we're attacking the tower. I guess the hive. Whatever, it's fine.
Reloading. Got me. Loading now. You're gonna pay for that.
Shoot where the most bugs seem to appear, and chances are you'll go on. But yeah, the goal here is, well, it would be good to destroy the big waves that come in, but focus on the tower.
Enemy defeated.
One of my previous strategies was
The attack is working. We've
Oh,
caused
yeah.
damage to the giant insect hive.
we're doing it. Yeah, I think the Goliath may be utterly broken. Because it does 600 damage. Also, I thought these were made out of, like, paper or something, not dirt. Like the giant hives. I guess, like, where would they get the paper from? Where would they get the dirt from? Oh god, it's the red ones. These ones are new. I don't remember these from 4.0. But yeah, so, funny story, actually. There was once, so, I sometimes like to search up, like, one of my guilty pleasures in life is looking at, like, 20-plus-year-old console warrior internet arguments. Not because I picked a side. I mean, I will pick the more reasonable side, you know, even if only implicitly while I'm reading the stuff. But I just kind of like seeing that, opinionated but clueless sort of thing, because these days when we discuss consoles, especially if I'm somebody who, you know, chats about them, I'll often try to talk about things, although, you know, everybody has a bias of the kinds of games they prefer, you know? Like, I like a lot of the single-player stuff, I like the RPGs, I like those kinds of games. I like Dynasty Warriors, and etc, etc. So obviously, like, for me, the PlayStation 2 is preferable to, like, the Dreamcast or GameCube or whatever, right? But, even within that, I find a lot of the specifically, like, silly, stupid discourse far more entertaining. Like, you know, back in the day, there was an argument that Final Fantasy VII, you know, betrayed. I remember specifically Googling, like, something of those quotes. Oh, I think it's dead. And I saw an AI-generated video, like, just a YouTube short. I couldn't tell because of the small preview. Like, I couldn't tell it was AI-generated until I clicked on it, and the entire thing was just lying. So the whole video was just bullshit. So in real life, what happened was Squaresoft didn't know which console they would go to, and they still had a belief that Nintendo would come to their senses and add a CD drive to the N64. And so because of that, they decided to development kits for the PlayStation and the Nintendo 64, and possibly the Saturn, I don't remember. And so they decided to test out, you know, game development for all of these systems. They had the little, you know, test dev kits, and they started out trying, you know, to make some 3D models, make some scenes, see what the systems were capable of. And that kind of gave people the wrong impression that, like, game journalists at the time, right? That, oh yeah, there are the N64 dev kits for Final Fantasy 64, or whatever, or like Ultra Final Fantasy, I don't know. I mean, at that point, you know, Final Fantasy 7/4 at the time. And so, then what happened was, you know, here comes 1996, like, February or whatever, and they reveal it coming to PlayStation well before the N64 was going to be out. Oops. And some people were disappointed, obviously, but they never claimed it was going to be, you know, a Nintendo 64 exclusive. The way this is important is because the short invents its own story, you know? I love this era of, like, AI-generated misinformation. However, no, the story is here that Squaresoft not only promised Nintendo that, which they didn't, but also they sent fake development reports back to Nintendo for months while secretly porting it to PlayStation. That's not how it works. But, like, yeah, these are the shorts I accidentally get to see on YouTube, and I don't use TikTok, and I don't normally look at YouTube shorts. I have an extension which just removes them from the feed, because they, like, I'm not somebody who's gonna say, like, oh, my time is very valuable. But as a human being, I should get to choose how I spend my free time. And that free time will not be spent watching fucking short-form content. If I want short-form content, I'm gonna fucking look at random funny shit on the internet. I don't want, like... I hate short-form content. It's not transparently obvious. But yeah, it's just so much misinfo. And it's crazy. But to continue off what I said earlier, I do really enjoy, like, the early console warrior stuff, because there's this whole, and, like, okay, this still happens today. There are still some people who, you can very rarely come across them online still. Maybe they're, like, you know, a bit of arrested development, a bit of neurodivergence, which makes them obsess over something in, like, more or less socially acceptable ways. And, like, that's kind of the thing, right? A lot of the times, the gap between the interesting autism and the, like, the one that people are like, oh, okay, it's really slim sometimes, right? Because there's this guy who's, like, I remember randomly coming across one of his videos in his feed, and he's, like, a small streamer or whatever, whose one big thing is that he plays the Friday the 13th game. And at least at a glance, like, he was playing it with that dog shit fucking controller. You know, that's his interest, you know, fucking the semi-shitty NES game. I know that it wasn't as bad as the EVGN claimed it was, but, like, it's still the bad Friday the 13th game, and the only one you can play now. But yeah, sadly for us, not every, because, like, I think it's the difference between, because, like, you know, it's the whole, and it's not just autism, I guess it's ADHD, it's other stuff. It's more complicated than people online pretend it is. But there's a pretty big sort of gap. Oh, okay,
has been destroyed. Operation successful.
I was gonna say, yeah, it's rolling. Can I reach that? Or will the mission end? It's gonna end now, it's gonna end now. You can hear the music subdue itself. Maybe not. Maybe I have to kill the remaining few enemies? But yeah, like, that was the thing. Like, the big difference between the, like,
Yes, sir.
it's basically just, like, how socially acceptable... It's about, like, social acceptability, right? Like, it's not enough for you to be... Obviously, it also depends what kind of space you're in. Obviously, in real life, like, you know, 20 years ago, caring about specifications was seen as, like, you know, thing people would, like, bully you. But these days, it's like, you know, the 4090. Oh, well, I have a 5090. You know, people are far more... There's so much...
Prepare fire. Yes, sir.
There's so much stuff, right? That's basically just, like, you know, things that are socially completely unacceptable. And then they enter the normie space, and suddenly they get, like, translated into, like, a socially acceptable form, when nothing changed about the thing in question. It's just that now, you know, it's kind of like how... Okay, yeah.
Succeeded in destroying it. If the flying insects are an evolved
Well,
version
what
of
if
the
I-
giant insects, they must share some
Damn
common
it.
traits.
I was trying to launch
There is a
myself off at
chance
an
that
angle.
the hive is connected
This,
to
maybe?
the underground nest. So
Yeah.
the portion above ground is just the tip of the iceberg?
Huh. But yeah, like, there's this whole thing, right? Where... What do we get? Nothing useful.
Select a mission. Deploying.
There's a whole thing, right, where after the PS1... Like, before the PS1 gaming was for kids, the PS1 made gaming for adults,
First, secure
and,
this hole.
the...
Create a road for the following units.
You know, the PS1 made gaming for adults, and then the
This is
PS2
Scout 10.
made
There's a
gaming a
massive
thing
army
for
of
dude
giant
bros.
insects below the hole.
Go! Go!
Well, would it be nice if I could see that? And, like, that's just how it went in general, right? Because, like,
This is Ranger 46. There's a
okay,
large
I'm
enemy
not gonna
army
be
ahead.
using...
There's no way we can overcome them on our own.
But that's basically just how things work, you know?
46. We'll
And,
send
you know,
them
in the
back up.
similar case, console warriormanship is only socially acceptable for, like, the levels which people find socially acceptable. So, like, calling the Switch 2 a piece of shit, or making fun of the Xbox as saying the PS5 has no games, that's socially acceptable. An actual analysis, socially unacceptable. Of course, on the internet it doesn't matter because there's, like, something which anyone, you know, there are things online that everybody can just kind of, everyone can sort of find their interest thing online, for better or for worse. I don't know which is more common. I would say for better is more likely.
But the East has declared they will defeat the Earth Eaters. They are preparing an attack strategy.
There are enemies close by.
Yeah.
This is it.
A huge army! They're waiting below the hole!
What hole? I can't see anything. Oh, is that a big spider? Yes, it is. Yeah, so anyways, what I was gonna say before I got rudely interrupted by the soldiers, one of the things I found recently was some guy calling basically Buck Bumble underrated, and Buck Bumble, especially in my friend groups, it's sort of like my nemesis game. You know, I don't really like the N64 for a variety of reasons, mainly because, like, past you get through the, like, critically acclaimed games, there's just, like, a big gap, and then, like, there's just not much stuff that's really that interesting. There's, like, the games everybody talks about, and while I can argue why I don't really like the Banjo-Kazooie style of collectathon, and I've slowly learned that, like, what I dislike about Banjo-Kazooie isn't intrinsic about Banjo-Kazooie. It's, basically, how do I explain this? I vastly prefer, like, Spyro 1 over Spyro 2, or I would even argue Spyro 3. I'm just a fan of, like, the Mario style of, like, collectathon, right? where you have a core gameplay loop that everything sort of builds around. Spyro's loop of, like, jumping, gliding, and, like, you know, that sort of stuff works really well. And, of course, like, you know, horning and flaming, that's the Spyro moveset. And, like, you know, adding on to that, something like, you know, adding on to the character's movesets is something that is good. Like, I mean, I think Flood is a bit too gimmicky in terms of Mario's moveset, but I think Cappy was done well, and Galaxy's gimmick was done well. I also feel like, I haven't completed, what's-its-face? Bowser's Fury, but I've played a good chunk of it. And I also appreciate how that game handles, like, the power-ups in a very interesting way. But yeah, obviously, the issue I have is, like, when the main gameplay kind of stops, and there's, like, a bunch of mini stuff you have to do in order to, like, you know, gamify the progression a bit more, unlocking moves like it's an RPG, that sort of stuff. I'm not a big fan of that sort of stuff in an RPG. Sorry, in a platformer.
You need to destroy it.
You know, adding these sort of I don't want to say Metroidvania elements, but yeah, I like it when the Metroidvanias are limited to the Metroidvanias, not a Spyro.
Select a mission.
Well,
Deploying.
Death Queen. What an alluring name. But yeah, anyways, this, I'm flying off topic like 50 times per second. Oh yeah, so the whole point of this entire thing is I found a channel that's like a guy who may have like a bit of, I don't know if Arrested Development would be the correct term, but like that sort of like, you know, obsession with the 90s, which I assume is his youth, based on the guy who makes the videos. What's funny is his channel hasn't been around for much longer. Honestly, I think some of my videos may have... No, yeah. Some of my earliest videos are gonna be like 9 years old this year. Jesus, has it really been that long with this stupid fucking thing? Of course, some of the really old ones you can't see because they're rather humiliating. But realistically, the issue I run into is I found quite a few channels like this, right? That are just like someone who maybe, like, you know, who may be a bit weird in a completely harmless way. And it's really entertaining just in the sense that, like, especially, like, you know, if you are into retro gaming, if you like the old systems and such, if you watch his videos, his comparisons between, like, he made one on, like, Mario RPG and Sonic 3D Blast, and said that because RPGs are overrated and Sonic 3D Blast is underrated, that Sonic 3D Blast wins. And, but yeah, like, you see what I mean. It's stuff that, like, contextually, if you know all there is to know about these old games, or, like, in my case, know the system and such, and know the hardware more, and like, you know, if somebody who's generally good at programming, well, not good at programming, but, like, good at the sort of understanding of the back end of stuff, in the sense that, like, you know, I know a lot of, like, the back-end development stuff that is, not necessarily difficult to know, but definitely esoteric. And so, like, at a glance, I can just kind of, especially for older games, right? Like, I can just see a GameCube game, or, like, an Xbox game, and just sort of guess what it runs on, sometimes. If it's a multi-plat, not really. It depends. But, you know, there's a specific style to this sort of stuff. And in my case, what I found quite funny is, you know, the channel was just so full of, you know, the guy despises RPGs, etc., etc. And it's really funny. However, while it is funny, like, just reacting to the videos, especially for the first time with my friends, while that was, like, entertaining, sadly, it's like, I thought to myself, because I have seen people successfully make videos like this in a way that is, like, interesting but doesn't feel cyberbully-ish. Like, you know, I've seen videos made on people who are, like, you know, harmless but interesting, entertaining. People who may even be problematic in some way, but obviously, like, sometimes special care is taken, you know? But even so, I've never felt comfortable even considering making a video like that. Because I feel like, even if it's, like, it done in good faith, just generally, like, putting a spotlight onto some people who really might not have the, you know, might not have the necessary, like, you know, skills to handle that attention. It's probably not a good idea. And I'm aware it's like, oh, why would you bring it up? Well, because I feel like it's an interesting conundrum, right? Because, like, it's very much, like, in a vacuum, right? It's a nobody cares sort of thing. If you like retro gaming, here's an interesting, like, individual who has some, like, silly video game takes we can laugh at. But, like, you know, whenever there's smoke, there's fire. Whenever there's a clearly, you know, disabled person on the internet, there are people who will, you know, seek them out in order to try to harass them and in order to try to get them to do awful stuff. That is how the internet works, and because of that, I feel like it's my responsibility as somebody who knows, you know, because obviously, like, there are some people who don't realize that what they are doing can genuinely, like, you know, be harmful, because they may not fully be aware of the underbelly that exists in this kind of space. But as somebody who is aware, I'd say it is my responsibility to, like, not contribite to that, even though I, you know, obviously wouldn't do it out of malice. And I'm aware, it's yeah. But do I go down there? Yeah, okay, because those guys are down there. I don't know, I've been thinking about it. Because there were two people. There was,
Storm team.
there's a guy who's, like, I'm gonna say clearly... Because the guy I was discussing is, I would say, better off, in the sense that his videos endearingly remind me of, like, 2000, of, like, YouTube back in, like, the late 2000s. It's, like, kind of endearing in a way, even if the videos are... Oh, shit, that's a massive bastard. Even if the videos are, like, well, bad. And realistically, like, he's, for what it's worth, like, fine, pretty... I would say pretty well off in the sense that, like, you know, I haven't seen anything eyebrow-raising. Like, you know, there's nothing that would end in, you know, that would end up, like, you know, necessarily having him pop up on one of those kinds of shitty, let's call them the leech channels, who, like, seek out these individuals, right? And then but this wasn't the first one. The other guy just, like, made videos of him going level through level in some, like, always kids games. Always, like, kids racing games. Like, well, now he has Mario Kart 8 Deluxe going, but he just keeps re-uploading the same videos of him playing PSP Hot Wheels games. The only reason why I came up, you know, across this channel was, I remember, this was back in, like, quite a few years ago, right? So you can imagine this has been going on. He started, you know, since around the pandemic, I believe, uploading these, and they're just, like, dark side fill you know, recording his TV screen while he's playing. Stretched in widescreen, of course. The videos are just like him, you know, playing the game in silence, and then uploading the video when he's done with the race, and continuously re-uploading them. And I found out about this because I wanted to show my friend the cool anti-gravity features in one of the Hot Wheels games, because I was like, look, it's cool. You get anti-gravity. And there was that. But that's not it, right? Then, because, you know, recently, the more I looked into it, the stranger shit I found, especially now with the prevalence of AI. One thing which I've noticed is, like, oftentimes, I don't want to be, like, an armchair I don't want to be an armchair psychologist, or, like, an unlicensed internet therapist, but as they say, one very important thing about you know, one very big thing about art for some people is, like, you know, escapism or self-fulfillment. In my case, when I make what you could loosely call as art, it's an attempt at making something which looks cool, something to evoke the kinds of vibes that I like in media. But in some cases, you know, the only real purpose of somebody's art may just be, you know, some kind of wish fulfillment. And in his case, it seems to be he really likes the characters from Totally Spies. Now, I remember only one thing from Totally Spies, and it's the fucking mutation morphing episode. You know the one I'm talking about, right? The one... What a weird fucking cartoon, yeah. What's funny is I remember Googling it, and, like, there are so many... I know some of them are, like, really stretching it, but, like... Well, like, 50 Dan Schneiders of different fetishes involved in making that show? Like what the fuck? It's... Yeah. Anyways, so that's just, shit. And it's like, you know, obviously, it's not something that I would ever really want to publicize, because, like, you know, I feel like only bad things could come from that endeavor. Oh my... You rat bastard! Explode already! There we go! Oh. Fucking... I'm not gonna make it to the fucking... Nah. Oh, I didn't even see what I got.
Choose loadout. Rangers can equip 2 weapons.
Stingray M2? Huh. Okay. So let's see. 230 damage? Okay. Times 3. So here's the issue, right? Rate of fire 1 per second. So 230 damage times 3 is 690. Reload time is 1.5 seconds. Radius is 8 meters. But if you add up the rates of fire, you fire immediately, wait a second, fire, wait a second, and now you have to reload. So it's 1, 2, 3.5 seconds for 690 damage. Here, it's 3 seconds for 600 damage, and a radius of 12 meters and zoom. So I'm gonna say the Goliath is better in this regard, and also you can one-shot stuff. Because you get, like... Let's round it up to, like, 700 damage in 3.5 seconds. Yeah, it's balanced, I would argue. Oh, wait, I don't want to equip 2 Goliaths. But it's, I believe it's better this way. Anyways, yeah, see you next time when we defend more for... Oh, hello there. Yeah, anyways, see you next time when we deal with all of those bastards. See you then, goodbye.